a live little mini session from IACP 2024. I'm glad you're joining us. For those who are watching live, if you're not going to be able to watch it live, of course, there'll be recording. My name is Anthony Bandiero. I'm an attorney and senior legal instructor for Blue to Gold Law Enforcement Training. This is what I do for a living. I have the honor and the privilege to train cops all around the nation in making good case law. IACP, if you do not know about this conference, it is the Super Bowl of police conferences. Nothing beats it. And we've been here for several days. I got to tell you, if you can maybe even see by my face, I'm ready to go home. But before I do that, I want to teach you about a quick session about duty to intervene. Now, quick introduction. So I like to start off with that. My goal is to explain when you have to get involved and do those things necessary so that you keep out of trouble, right? But one thing that I like to, my viewpoint on duty intervention in general is that this is 100% positive. In other words, there is nothing negative about intervening on another officer who's not doing the right thing, right? Now, what that officer is doing is obviously negative. I hope and pray that you'll never have the misfortune to be on scene where another officer is violating somebody's rights. But at the end of the day, we have to understand the reality is that sometimes they do. And if you're there, you can actually do good by intervening soon so that you prevent even more harm and so forth. You can save careers, especially if you do it soon enough, right? Now, let's look at this video. You probably won't see it too much from the screen, but I can't overlay it, but I'll show you an example of intervention.
Little bloody and little money, that's how it works.
She failed in every aspect of what she did.
2 years after Loveland police violently arrested a 73-year-old woman with dementia, the second officer involved in the case faced the consequences of what she did that day, or rather, what she did not do.
Do not hook on to him.
On June 26th of 2020, Loveland police officers Austin Hopp and Daria Jalali arrested 73-year-old Karen Garner, who had walked out of a nearby Walmart without paying for about $13 worth of goods. During the arrest, Hopp forced Garner's arm behind her back, put her in handcuffs, and took her to the ground. Garner ended up with a broken shoulder and was placed in a holding cell for several hours without medical treatment. Hopp and Jalali were then seen on police station surveillance video laughing about the incident as they watched the body camera video. Hopp pleaded guilty to assault and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Jalali pleaded guilty to a single misdemeanor charge of failing to intervene. During sentencing on Friday, she apologized to Garner and her family and said she regretted not confronting Hopp during the arrest. The judge in the case told Jalali that her obligation to intervene was painfully obvious.
I hope that the video came out clear enough, we'll see. But the point is that you have somebody who started off blameless. If you are on scene and you are there when another officer is engaged in misconduct, legally, your status right there is you are blameless. You did nothing wrong. You had the misfortune of being on scene with another officer engaged in misconduct, but you have not done anything wrong. But if you do not do what I'm telling you to do in this session, you become blameworthy, and that is 100% unacceptable. You have to do the right thing when it matters, otherwise you become blameworthy. Now, also, intervention is not for your stereotypical excessive force cases, right? That's what we see on the news. Those get the big headlines. Of course, that gets some of the biggest paychecks. But it also involves minor issues that I'm going to show you here, issues that are kind of routine, trespassing calls that can turn bad and so forth. Now, why do we need this course? Professionals are prone to mistakes, right? We need other people to have our back. You work in a very highly charged environment. What I mean by that is that there are people out there that really want to see you lose control. They actually relish in your demise. Obviously, that's not a great point of view. Those people exist, but they will try to do things to amp you up and for you to lose control and so forth. And obviously, not intervening will actually jeopardize your freedom and so forth. Now, a lot of money is paid around the country for misconduct. It's in millions and millions and millions of dollars every year. But how much intervention training have you actually had? How much is the academy doing? I think that sometimes I don't think it's enough. I think we can do actually a better job. Also, misconduct is a tip of the iceberg issue, right? As far as the money being paid, it's a tip of the iceberg. What about the other things below the surface? What about the stress on the officer? What about the PR, the bad PR that it creates for your beloved agency? In other words, we have to have a culture of self-policing, because letting this occur and so forth is actually not just about money, it's also about the prestige, the PR, the stress, and so forth that goes along with it. Now, there's a saying out there, and you know the saying just as I do, right? These people that are in this conference, they've heard this thousands of times. Go home at night. You've heard of that. Go home at night. But is that all you care about? Of course not, right? My mission is this. Of course you should go home at night. If you do not go home, does it really matter what we teach you at Blue to Gold? No, right? It doesn't matter if you're 6 feet deep, you don't care about case law. However, go home at night. But make sure you're doing the right things to wake up in your own bed with a job in the morning. Never get criminally charged. And if you do get sued, you win. I want to kind of repeat that because I think that's important, okay? Do what you got to do to go home at night, right? That's at least 51% of the equation. But listen to what I'm teaching you so that you wake up in your own bed with a job in the morning. You do not get criminally charged. And if you do get sued, you win. I cannot stop people from suing you, right? Nobody can. People can just throw paper at you for a filing fee. But if you're doing the right thing, you should win these cases. Let's talk about 1983 lawsuits. A 1983 lawsuit is a very common lawsuit. Why? Because if the plaintiff can win, they can get a lot of money, right? There is no caps on a 1983 civil rights lawsuit. Now, let's read what it says. It says, every person who under color of any statute, ordinance, regulation, custom, or usage causes to be subjected any citizen of the United States or other person within the jurisdiction thereof to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured by the Constitution and laws shall be liable to the party injured in an action at law, suit in equity, and other proper proceedings for redress. Let's break this down into three categories. Number one is, what can we sue about, right? It's violations of civil rights. But who can we sue? Only those acting under color of law, right? You have to be trying to carry out a law, trying to to enforce laws, right? But again, you can only sue for a right. That's what this is for, right? If you got battered by an officer, that could be a battery and a civil rights claim, right? But these rights come from the Constitution, they come from federal law. Your state may also have its own statutory scheme for civil rights violations under state law, but that's not what we're talking about right now. And finally, what can we get in return, right? Money. The law cannot give you back your legs. They cannot give you back your freedom, your car. They can only give money.
What can I do for you, Rod? You just tell me, what can I do for you?
It's a very personal, very important thing. Hell, it's a family matter.
Are you ready, Joe? I'm ready. Well, then make sure you're ready, brother.
Here it is. Show me the money.
Show me the money, right? And I don't want to, come off as belittling their claims and so forth. A lot of these claims are legitimate, but when it comes to what they want in return, they want money, and oftentimes they want a lot of money. So, in sum, in order to get a valid lawsuit against you, they're going to have to prove two things to get into court. One, you deprived a federal right, and two, you were acting under color of state law. Let's see this in action, right? Now, the other thing I want you to know is that in order to win these lawsuits, you do not have to, prove that you have real measurable damages. All you have to do is at least prove that your rights were violated. And the court can give a nominal sum, which is $1, right? Just say, look, you're right, the cop messed up, here's $1. But the one thing that the juries do not know, and they're not going to be told, is that if they give the plaintiff $1, then in return, the plaintiff will also get all of their attorney's fees. And I have seen cases where the plaintiff got $14,000 and the attorney got $375,000 because that's what it ended up being when it was all said and done, when the dust settled. That is crazy, but that's the way that these lawsuits work, okay? You don't need real damages. So, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Bosch, right? It's one of my favorite shows. It's actually a pretty good cop show about an LAPD detective, but it's on Amazon Prime. But the point is this: watch this. Hopefully you can hear it. I'll stay close to the speaker and listen to what happens in this little snippet from the movie, the TV show.
Has the jury reached the verdict?
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the case of Rosa Flores versus Hieronymus Bosch in the city of Los Angeles, upon our oaths do find in favor of plaintiff Rosa Flores. We find full damages to be $1.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your service.
What did she say, $1?
Bullshit. He was right as rain with that shit. Oh, come on, take yes for an answer, Harry. Will you? The jury's made a statement. Yeah, that I fucked up. No, that you guided that guy up the street. You just bent the rules a little too far. Well, I can appeal if you want me to. Come on, you're not serious. You wouldn't. It was a rhetorical suggestion, Harry.
Feeling good about yourself, counselor?
Just another day at the office.
Seem pretty pleased with someone who just won
Good seeing you.
$1. What's your cut? 33 1/3 cents?
I did a little better than that, detective. The plaintiff won, so I'm not limited to my piece per dollar.
No?
Now, Mrs. Flores won't be paying my legal fees. That obligation will fall to the city of Los Angeles.
How much?
Ballpark, I'll probably bill them $550,000.
Good luck with that.
Oh, they'll squawk, go through the motions. We'll do-si-do around the dance floor a couple of times, do the ritual back and forth, and then we'll settle at $250, $275.
So they call you money.
That they do. See you around, detective. Most likely in court.
All right, for those who couldn't hear it or see it as well as I saw it, in essence, what happened there is that the jury gave the plaintiff $1, and the attorney is saying, well, I'm not going to get 33 cents, right? I'm going to get about $300,000 when it's all said and done. And I got to tell you, that is absolutely true, right? So what level of intervention? Now, this focus right here on this IACP little breakout session that we're doing in our booth, I'm focusing on culture because culture contributes to liability. I like to say that culture beats policy. And you know what I'm talking about. Culture beats policy. If you have a policy in place and it says you are going to do X, Y, and Z, but you have a culture that says you're going to do A, B, and C, or not do anything at all, what's going to win? Culture. Now, I want to talk about customs and practice. We're not going to be here for that long because it's a little mini session, but officers contribute to customs and practice, and that can contribute to liability, right? So if the plaintiff can prove that that constitutional violation was the moving force behind the violation, then they can find, the court can find that the agency was actually contributing themselves to the liability. Okay, let's talk about Lamar Wright versus the city of Euclid. In a nutshell, this is what happened. Lamar goes up to a house. He pulls up. He rolls down his window, I guess, and like he's talking to the person on the porch. Unbeknownst to Lamar, this house is actually being watched by undercover drug officers, right? And so they allegedly think that Lamar's involved in drug transactions, but the problem is that Lamar never left his car and nobody came to the door, or to the car door, right? So he just leaves. I think he was probably told that this was not a good time to do his business, but he left. The cops then pull him over, okay? And this is in essence how they interacted with Lamar.
Shut the car off. Let me see your hand. Let me see your heart. I got what's the name? Taser deployment. Taser deployment. Get on, lay on the ground now. Don't move.
Okay.
Rayer and 210.
All right. In a nutshell, what happened there is that they got him out of the car very aggressively. He sues for excessive force. He says not only are the officers involved in this, but the agency contributed to this. They have a culture of teaching excessive force. And part of his proof was a Chris Rock video that was played in a training session, okay? Now, a lot of officers have seen this Chris Rock video. It's called How to Not Get Your Ass Kicked by the Police, okay? And I've seen it. It's funny, but, you know, in its own right? But what's not funny is putting this into the official training curriculum, you know, for your defensive tactics research. That is probably not funny. But the sergeant who did it, in his defense, what is he going to say, right? Hey, I'm just trying to lighten the mood and so forth. And they'll say, well, what's funny about this snippet here, right? You have an unarmed person who's getting beaten by multiple officers. What's funny about that? Well, you're taking it out of context. Okay, you're not trying to send a message? No, sir, right? What's funny about the next scene, about a guy who says F the police, or we know what the F are you pulling me over for, and then he gets beaten. What is funny about that? Well, you're taking it out of context. I just look at the whole video. The jury is going to see that if you look at these snippets here, yeah, they are taken out of context, but the lawyer is trying to prove that it's sending a subliminal message. I don't know how well you can see this, but this is a little stick figure, which is kind of cheesy, and it says protecting and serving the poop out of you. And it's a figurative cop beating an unarmed person. So this is also part of the training manual. The point is, did this culture of probably bad comedy in a training class, right? Did this culture contribute to liability? And the answer is yes. The court held that there was no qualified immunity and that the jury would be the ones deciding whether or not there was liability here on behalf of the agency. I can tell you that at the end of the day, the agency settled out of court with Mr. Wright. So we have to be cognizant of what we're doing out there. So have you ever heard of a cop changing out dust covers on their AR, right? Of course you have. But should that be on your work gun, on your self-defense gun? There was a shooting that happened in like Mesa, Arizona several years ago where if you watch the video, I'm not going to show it today because I don't have time, but you watch the video, it's really, really a bad video, right? Officers screaming at the person, showing no level of restraint. And ultimately, they end up shooting the guy, and on the cop's work gun was, "You're fucked." Okay, that's what it says. And that contributed to police liability. I look at those things, and I think that's a problem with culture, right? I'll be surprised if policy would allow something like this. But even so, how in the world does a cop think it is okay to put on his work gun something like that, right? So the point is, it's things like this that we're looking for. This can contribute to bad outcomes. This is another picture, again, with YouTube Live, it's hard to zoom in, but this is an agency out there that has put the Punisher logos on their police cars. And I gotta tell you, Chief, I don't know who you are, I never met you before, Chief, but I gotta tell you, allowing this is really not good for PR, in my view. Again, I don't know, I'm sure your public really supports you, obviously, but more importantly, from the legal point of view, this is going to come into court if any of your officers are accused of kind of excessive force and so forth. And so, you know, the Punisher has its own, you know, brand, the movie, it's vigilante justice, and you just don't want to have a jury thinking that you have a culture of vigilante justice. Keep that in mind, right? Okay, your supervisor clearly can be involved in misconduct, right? But the point is that we want supervisors to make sure that they are empowered to intervene as soon as possible, right? As this quote says, there is no factor more important to the avoidance of liability and the upgrading of the agency's professional performance and attainment of its standards than the quality of supervision. Let me make this clear. Generally speaking, I'm generalizing here, but supervisors, I'm talking about the three stripes, right? Sergeants usually are the most effective and important person in your agency to prevent misconduct. And why do I say that? Because A, they're the closest one in the street, right? And B, they know where the problem children are. They know what officers need a little more supervision, and they know who is actually doing a pretty good job. You want to make sure you empower your sergeants to keep on the lookout for issues like this, right? For example, having an officer doing a training class and putting stuff in the PowerPoint that is just not appropriate for professional police instruction. Okay, obviously, a supervisor can also be jammed up if they are involved in the misconduct.
This warrant for Officer Todd Thomas is painting a picture of a nightmare scenario that led to him being booked on felony charges this week. Thomas charged with malfeasance, obstruction of justice, simple battery, and theft. Documents show he punched a man several times while being processed prior to being booked. According to a BRPD officer who witnessed the incident, Thomas then accessed an app to view the footage. That's when Troy Lawrence Sr. looked at it and he told him he had to get rid of it.
According to our investigation, we learned that a supervisor believed that the contents on that video were violations of our policy and excessive use of force, and then directed an officer to get rid of the body camera so that the evidence could not be downloaded in the docking station.
All right. So the point is that obviously we can never allow a supervisor to be directly involved in any misconduct. That supervisor, by trying to encourage his subordinate to delete body cam footage, is now ruined his career, and now he was criminally charged, right? So peer intervention. A lot of professions already have peer intervention. This is called active bystandership, and this is like pilots have active bystandership. They encourage all crew members, including the flight attendants, to see something, say something, do something, right? This was actually a seminal issue in the 1970s when a airplane ran out of fuel, and the co-pilot actually knew the plane was running out of fuel and did not actually do enough to prevent that from happening, and he lost his life because of it. The military has intervention. Medical staff have intervention. The nurse, anybody in the operating room, if they see something that is not correct, like the gauzes are not accounted for, and maybe that's a common malpractice thing to leave gauze in people. They are encouraged, like, hey doctor, we're one short, check your work, that type of thing. It wasn't always like that. Firefighters have intervention when you wake them up, and now it's us, right? We have to actually police ourselves. You've heard this before, but it actually has to be meaningful. We get mad. Officers oftentimes, get a little upset when civilian control, right? When big agencies start doing civilian oversight. There's actually an organization that is dedicated just to that. They don't want it because they don't think that the public and the civilians understand what they do. But the point is, if you don't want that, if you don't have it already, you don't want that, you better police yourself, because if you don't and a bad incident happens, that will be the catalyst for your public to say, you know what, our local agency cannot police itself. We want outside control, which, generally speaking, police officers do not want. They want to be able to police themselves and do crime control the way that they think is fitting and constitutional. Now, let me just tell you what the law is. Number one, that the law is required for everybody, right? There is no... It's clearly established in every circuit that you have to intervene, right? And so let me just say what the law is, and please have a seat if you want, please. Number one is clear violation, okay? We're not looking for wobblers, right? We're looking for a situation where a reasonable police officer objectively would see this and be like, you know what, this is illegal, this is unconstitutional. Number two, you have to know about it. We can, if you have a supervisor that is, and their subordinate engages in misconduct, but that supervisor did not know and should have not known, right? That the person was engaged in misconduct, that supervisor should not really be named in that lawsuit. If they are named, they should be let go and kicked out of the lawsuit. Realistic opportunity to intervene. Okay, this is probably the number one defense for police officers, is that, yeah, they have an officer across the street, right, handling a protest. And that officer loses his control and punches a suspect in the face while in handcuffs. They run over there, they get the guy, the officer back, separated and so forth. And then the suspect wants to sue everybody on scene. The problem is that unless you have stretchy arms, right, you cannot have prevented that. And that's going to be the argument in court, is that, hey, I saw it, but I don't have stretchy arms. By the time I got over there, it was already done. Failed to take reasonable steps. This is another thing where, okay, even if you did intervene, was it enough, right? Did you actually do something? If you go back to George Floyd, the officers on scene did not do what was legally required of them, which is physically pulling Chauvin off of Floyd and saying, we're done here, right? Roll him up, get him in a rescue position and so forth. And finally, did that failure to act cause harm? Okay, that one out of all these 5 is the one that's the least defensible. In other words, if you're going to court and you're like, Your Honor, I knew about it, I had an opportunity to do something about it, I didn't do enough, but he would have still died, or his ribs would have still been broken. That is a horrible argument to be in, position to be in, because courts are not very sympathetic that you could have done more, but now your argument is that he wouldn't have got as hurt, right? They don't want to hear that. They want to hear, did you make a reasonable effort? If not, you're probably going to be jammed up in it. So a clear violation is based on objective reasonableness, right? Objective reasonableness. Often these cases come down to excessive force, false arrest with no probable cause, and a failure to render aid. Now, you have to know about it, right? So if you don't know about it, I already told you, then that's not going to be, you can't be held liable, right?
Department responded to a Target location in Albuquerque, New Mexico upon reports of shoplifters in the store. According to Officer Schemes, a Target loss prevention employee then informed him of another quote-unquote shoplifter, seemingly referring to Matthew McManus, a 53-year-old man with unidentified disabilities who was struggling to complete a purchase at a self-checkout kiosk. Although there seems to be some dispute as to whether the Target employee claimed Mr. McManus was a shoplifter or wanted him to be removed from the store, the Albuquerque officers approached Mr. McManus at the self-checkout. The interaction that followed was captured on body camera.
Do you want to walk us to walk you out, or you want to walk you out? Go ahead and put your money in. I'm going to just like, okay? Come with us, okay? Gotcha. Take your money out. You're coming with us now, okay? Go ahead and grab your money, sir. We'll walk you out, okay? Go ahead and pick your money up. So we're going to do that. Do you want to walk us to walk you out? I'm leaving, okay? Civil trespass, so you can't come back to the city, okay?
Okay, so at the end of the day, you see what you see, right? So I think it's pretty clear to a lot of people that objectively that person is not a criminal, right? That person has cash on the countertop, and they obviously have a inability to process the checkout process, efficiently. But the point is, we have other officers on scene, and did they do anything about that? The answer is no. At the end of the day, this officer was criminally charged with a battery on a protected on a person with disabilities and so forth. And the other officers were also, to my knowledge, disciplined, and the officer was fired for this misconduct. That's an example of, that's not necessarily an excessive force case, but that's something that we see that should have never happened, right? And I say no common sense. Okay. before we end off here, I want to talk about how to intervene, right? So I'm going to give you 5 things that I think that are really going to help you and your agency, right? So we get a camera here. So number 1 is policy. Obviously, you have to have a policy for intervention, right? If not, you could be held liable just for not having the policy. Number 2 is agreement. This is actually a very, very big pro tip. And what I mean by this does not come from me, this comes from New Orleans and their program called EPIC. That's their intervention program. And when you are thinking about, not thinking about, but when you are implementing an intervention program, I want you to, think about having a conversation with people in the squad room, right, in the briefing room, and make sure that everybody agrees that intervention is actually in their benefit. In other words, if I was working with you and you saw me doing something, improper, out of policy or misconduct, the sooner you intervene, the more you're helping me, right? Because you can actually help me save my job. But I can tell you that if you let me fail right in front of you, not only could I potentially go to jail, but now you're going to be wrapped up as well, right? Asking questions. The next one is ask questions. What we're talking about here is that if you see something that does not seem right, that okay, I don't know if there's misconduct here, but you need to ask questions like, what is going on with this guy? What do you need me to do? Why are we arresting him? Why did you just do what you just did?
Tell me what's going on.
Just put your hands behind your back before you end up on the ground.
I'm trying to drop my phone.
Have a seat if you want to.
You're being detained for a minute. You matching the description of someone trying to break into people's cars.
I'm not breaking anyone's car.
Stand by your fucking back. You dumb bastard.
Oh my God! I just go to work!
They don't know where we're going.
Help me! I just go to work!
You got that? Yeah.
I'm just going to work!
All right, so here's my point on that. Obviously, I think most cops are going to understand that what just happened there did not look correct, right? We're not taught the WWF techniques in the academy, right? So my view on that, though, is we don't know what's going on, right? We don't know. There could have been a lawful reason for that takedown maneuver. So I'm okay with an officer going up there and backing up his fellow officer and helping get that guy under control. I'm okay with that because we don't know yet. But after that guy is cuffed and stuffed in the back of the police car, what needs to happen? What needs to happen is that backup officer needs to say, what in the hell just happened there? Why did you do that to that guy? What did he do to call for that? And if I do not hear from my fellow officer a damn good reason about what just happened there, right? I'm not sure then I'm going to say, hey, you better tell Sarge what's going on here and get him on scene because that looks like excessive force. That's what needs to happen. If it doesn't happen, you're going to be jammed up in this too. All right. So the other one is that slow things down. I got to tell you that you'll see this in a lot of my training. You'll see it in de-escalation training. You'll see it in my search and seizure training. You'll see it here in duty intervene. So many problems in law enforcement, so many high liability cases result from not slowing things down. There is this temptation from police officers to rush an outcome when really it should not have been rushed, right? Slow things down. I think a great example is this call right here. What happened here is an officers respond to a person in crisis. The person is barricaded in a bathroom with a knife, and let's go from there.
Hey man, we will kick in the door and I don't want to do it. Is there a key to the store? Huh? Michael, you want to do this the easy way, don't make us do it the hard way. Is there another way to the bathroom? Go left side. Stay down! Stay down! Stay down! Stay down! Take it down!
All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause it and I'm going to say, what do we have here? We have a person who's in crisis, barricaded in a bathroom with a knife. Is this the right move, right? Is this the right thing to kick this guy's door in and rush an outcome? And you know the answer is absolutely not. They should have all left the house. They should have got the family out of the house. They should have barricaded him, calling people who are trained to handle these situations. And I can tell you, if it took 6 hours to handle, it would have been way cheaper than what's about to happen next. I'm going to fast forward a little bit because it's a long video. We don't have a lot of time.
Drop the knife, bro. Please. Hey, I don't want to shock you again. I don't want to shock you again. Don't shock you, Sonny. I need no taser. I need no taser. God damn it. Stop!
I think we've seen enough of that. So the point is, that was not the right move. That was not the right move under the circumstances, right? They rushed an outcome. It was not necessary, and so forth. And that's just a part of the training. Now, the last thing I'm going to end off, for time's sake, is physical intervention. Obviously, you have to do the right thing. Now, this is probably one of the best videos I've seen. The other one's one of the worst. This is actually one of the best.
Now, Sunrise police are investigating one of their own after a sergeant is caught on camera putting his hands around the throat of a fellow officer.
A Sunrise sergeant has been relieved of supervisory duties and is under investigation following this incident. Police body cam video shows Sergeant Christopher Pulley's put his hands on another officer's throat. The incident happened last year on November 19th. Officers were called to a convenience store along the Sunset Strip. They say Jean-Bernard Similian battered several people and were trying to place him in a patrol car. According to Sunrise Police Chief Anthony Rosa, Similian was resisting officers. He goes on to say in a written statement, once the suspect was inside the patrol vehicle, the sergeant approached and engaged in a verbal altercation with the suspect in a manner that I feel was inappropriate and unprofessional. The supervisor escalated the encounter instead of de-escalating an emotionally charged situation. Rosa also says while speaking to the suspect, the sergeant is seen holding his can of pepper spray but doesn't use it. That's when a nearby officer who was concerned with things escalating further intervened. You can see her running to police, grabbing him by his belt, pulling him backwards. He then turns and aggressively grabs her by the neck while pushing her backwards.
Have you seen that video before too? You seen that movie before? Yeah. So, all right, so here's the deal. Clearly, at least clearly to me, the officer did the right thing. The officer's actually a hero in many ways, right? But look at what she saw, right? She saw a sergeant about to pepper spray a man in handcuffs in the back of the police car. Even if the sergeant says later, you know what, my intent was not to pepper spray him, I was just looking to scare him into compliance. I say, I don't care. I don't care because, A, if that was your intent, did you even communicate that to anybody on scene? Does she know that? If that was the case, right? And B, I also don't care because that's not the way we do business, right? There are other de-escalation techniques that we can do long before shaking a can and trying to scare somebody into compliance like that and basically threatening to violate their rights. I don't like it. It looks bad. The cop did the right thing, and now the sergeant is going to have, obviously, his career is going to be cut short because he actually just strangled a fellow officer, right? So that's pretty much it, right? So I will tell you at the end of the day, this short little mini session, I'm glad you guys are watching it. Thank you for joining us live. At the end of the day, culture beats policy. Please make sure that when you're talking about these issues, you're instilling confidence in your officers to do the right thing if you're ever in the misfortunate situation to be on scene. But I also will tell you that intervention is absolutely positive. It can do no harm. If it's done appropriately, like I've kind of been teaching here in this little mini session, then it's only going to help the situation. It's not going to be worse. If you like what we're doing here at Blue to Gold, consider hosting us. Bring me out to your agency. Go to bluetogold.com. You can reach out to our training manager, Aaron Martin. And until next time, my friends, you stay safe.